This is Bogus Dave's First Crime Spree, Book 1, an illustrated true story of humorous teen mayhem by David Champney. Bogus Dave's First Crime Spree, Book 1 by David Champney. Crude, inconsistent illustrations and coloring, hand-drawn by David Champney. Copyright 2026 by David Champney. All rights reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means electronic, mechanical, photocopying, recording, or otherwise, without prior written permission of the author. Warning: do not attempt to recreate or reenact any of the activity in this book. It could result in injury or death. It could also result in serious consequences from law enforcement agencies and/or officials. This book is meant for entertainment only. Once upon a time, there was a teenager named Bogus Dave. He liked to cause trouble. Back in 1989, him and his pals went on a crime spree in their hometown of Beloit, Wisconsin. Here's how it started. It was the end of Dave's senior year of high school. He was a half credit short of math. This meant he would have to go to summer school, then get his high school diploma in August. This sucked. Dave's dad had been cheating on his mom with a bar tramp named Kim. His mom screamed and yelled. His dad moved out. Now, with his mom working nights, Bogus Dave was free to go out with his buddies and cause trouble in the streets of Beloit. "Get the F out now!" Dave's mom yelled at his dad. This was Larry. Dave had known him for just a few years. He was kind of slow, lazy, and liked to eat a lot. Larry also liked listening to music and hanging out. His parents had him when they were old. They could almost be his grandparents. This was Ron. Dave had known him since 10th grade. Ron was kind of a jerk and sometimes selfish. He liked to work on cars, but he wasn't as good as he thought he was. He drove a late 70s Oldsmobile Cutlass. Ron lived with his mom. His dad had died before he'd even known Dave. This was Dave's buddy Frank. He had known him since junior high school. He was a cool guy. Frank was really good at working on cars. He owned a Chevy Chevette and an Oldsmobile Starfire. He lived with his mom, dad, and little sister. His dad had only one arm. It had got blown off when he was a teen and had tried to blow up a football field with dynamite. Bogus Dave and his pals were all a bunch of misfits. They all hung out together because they all liked to steal stuff and cause trouble. One of them more than the others. Can you guess who that is? One night, Dave and Larry were bored and decided to go push over the soda machine at the mini golf behind Dairy Queen. It was very heavy. Bogus Dave almost crapped his pants when they pushed it over. They ran off laughing because the old man who owned the place was going to be mad. Behind Dave's house was the teacher's credit union. He liked to go up there and knock out all the parking lot lights with his wrist rocket. Then Dave would take off the access panels and yank out the wiring, so the credit union would need someone to come and rewire everything. Dude, you have serious problems. Larry laughed. Stupid light pole, Dave growled as he pulled the wires out. Dave and the guys liked to hang out at the payphone at Northgate Plaza across from Aldridge Junior High. They'd call random numbers to yell at sleeping people. They also liked to call up this kid Jamie and leave all kinds of trash talking on his mom's answering machine. And you smell gross, Dave yelled into the phone. You're an ugly old troll, Ron said. You guys are ruthless, Larry laughed. Frank just stood off to the side laughing. Usually 2 to 3 nights a week, Bogus Dave and his pals would go out, causing trouble and terrorizing the city of Beloit. It was going to be a crazy summer. Dave and the guys loved going out and knocking out windows with their wrist rockets. Sometimes they'd drive around in Ron's car. Dude, people are going to be pissed, Ron said, as Frank and Larry laughed, watching Dave launch another wrist rocket projectile. Other times, they'd go out in one of Frank's cars. They really enjoyed the sound of breaking glass. They all laughed loudly at this destruction. Oh, yeah! Dave yelled out as he prepared to launch another Steely. Holy crap! You're hitting all the windows tonight, Larry laughed. Frank just drove and laughed at all the destruction. The police station would get swamped with calls from angry people. Then the cops would be mad because they had to go all over Beloit dealing with complaints about all the broken windows. The local glass repair company was very happy. They made a lot of money replacing all the windows Dave and the guys broke that summer. Dude, our paycheck is going to be huge, the one worker said. Ain't that a fact? The other one laughed. Frank, Ron, and Dave were cruising around one night when Dave remembered an old storage building out past the hospital. He had always wanted to sneak in and see what was inside. They decided to go check it out. It's out on Prairie Avenue, down from Turner High School, Dave was explaining. Oh, I think I know where you're talking about, said Frank. Better be something good, like some tools, Ron snarked. Ron chickened out at the last second and went driving around. Dave and Frank went to the storage building to snoop around and see what they could find. Ron is so lazy, Frank said. But if we find some good stuff, he'll want some of it, Dave laughed. Frank used a crowbar to break the padlock off the door. Then him and Dave snuck inside and let their eyes adjust to the dark. It was dusty and smelled like chemicals. After a little snooping, all they could find were shelves and shelves of old paint cans. In the back was an old truck with a bunch of junk in the bed. Frank and Dave were disappointed. There's nothing but a bunch of old junk in here, Frank said. This was a waste of time, Dave agreed. They were about to leave when Bogus Dave found a small mini bike. It looked like it would be lots of fun to ride around on. They had found something cool. This is cool, said Dave. Sweet, Frank agreed. They carried it outside and went behind the building where no one would see them. They tried to start it up, but no luck. They gave it a few pulls, but it just wouldn't start. We could take it back to Ron's garage and fix it there, Dave suggested. Cool. Let's carry it through the cornfield so no one sees us, Frank said. Frank and Dave carried the mini bike through the muddy cornfields to the empty streets behind Turner High School. This was where Ron was supposed to be waiting. Ron wasn't there. So Dave gave the mini bike a pull. It started right up this time. It sounds good, Frank yelled. Brum, 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 brum. The mini bike sat there idling. Figures. It waited till after we went through the mud and corn, Dave laughed, looking at all his muddy clothes. Dave and Frank took turns riding the mini bike until Ron finally showed up. They headed back to Ron's house with their new toy. You like what we found? Frank pointed at the mini bike. Awesome, ain't it? Dave eagerly said. Nice snag, kleptos, Ron chuckled. Back in 1989, it was pretty boring in Beloit. There wasn't much happening unless you were 21 and could go in a bar. One night, Ron and Larry were hanging out with Bogus Dave in his garage. Dude, I'm bored. I'm going home, Ron sulked. It ain't even 10:30, Larry said. Hey, let's go break into Aldridge Junior High. Sneak around, Dave suggested before they took off. As usual, Ron was being a grump about these things. How the heck are we going to get in there? Ron snarked at Dave. There's a door by the art rooms with a stripped-out lock. All you need is a screwdriver or a key. I get in all the time, Dave responded. They headed up the block and crossed Prairie Avenue to go break into Aldridge Junior High. Things were about to get interesting. That is crazy. You sure there's no alarms? Ron asked Dave. Yeah, I do this all the time, Dave told him. After they snuck in, they made their way to the Commons lunchroom. Bogus Dave had brought bolt cutters to get into the ice cream freezer. Where's the damn ice cream? Ron growled. The freezer's usually full. They must have emptied it for the summer, Dave said as he held up the cover. Is there food anywhere else? Larry asked. Ron and Larry followed Bogus Dave to the main kitchen, hoping to get some snacks. Unfortunately, it was locked up tight, and they couldn't get through the heavy doors. Dude, this is a big waste of time, Ron said, frustrated. If I had a crowbar, I could pry out the vent. Dave messed with the vent in the door. Ron was annoyed. Larry was hungry and tired of all the walking. Dave was having a good time snooping around the school. The shop classes are down here, Dave pointed. If we don't find any tools, I'm out of here, Ron growled. I wish I had a soda and some chips, Larry whined. The door to the shop class was unlocked. They went in and started looking around. Ron found something nice. Dude, I'm taking this bench grinder for my garage, Ron said excitedly. There's some wrenches in the wall cabinets you can use, Dave told him. I'm starving. Larry was still crying. While Ron was unbolting the bench grinder from the table, Dave and Larry went down the hall and got into the wood shop. Why do you want this stuff? Larry asked. I like chisels and saws for woodworking, Dave told him. After Ron got the bench grinder unbolted, they took it to a back door down a hallway next to the girls' locker rooms. They were going to come back later with Ron's car to get it. Cool. Now where? Let's check, Ron said. Let's check out the music rooms. Might be some speaker systems, Dave said, pointing down the hallway. The door to the music room was unlocked. Unfortunately, they weren't able to find any speakers or stereo equipment. I don't know. Maybe they use them somewhere else for the summer, Dave thought. Hey, this door leads to a hallway. There's a bunch of other rooms, Larry said off to the side. Dave and Ron followed Larry down the hallway. There were a bunch of small rooms for storage and practicing instruments. Dave made an awesome discovery. Ooh, a megaphone, like the cops use. Give me the hammer. Dave was super excited. Dave swung the hammer and hit the glass door. Clang! Incredibly, it did not break. Everyone was stunned. That's some thick glass, Ron said, tapping it. I don't care. I'm getting that megaphone, Dave said, undeterred. Dave swung the hammer and hit the glass as hard as he could. It shattered, and he cut his hand on the broken glass. Crash! Ow! I cut my hand! Dude, stop! Larry said as Dave waved his hand, spraying blood. Stop shaking your hand around, Ron growled as he was getting blood splatter on him. Luckily, Ron had some duct tape and wrapped up Dave's hand. They grabbed the megaphone and headed back out to the main hallway. Ron and Larry were covered in blood splatter from Dave waving his hand erratically. Dude, you got blood splatter all over me, Ron growled at Dave. Sorry, I kind of freaked out, Dave chuckled. I'm still hungry, Larry whined. Bogus Dave and the guys went and stole some art supplies, then walked across Prairie Avenue back to Dave's house. They jumped in Ron's car and went back to the school to get the bench grinder. It turned out to be a good night. They're going to think someone was murdered back there, Larry said. I can't wait to get the bench grinder mounted in the garage, Ron said happily. Dave just laughed at all the trouble they had caused.